Hello, welcome to Cooking in Quarantine. Doesn't that sound a little ominous? It is a little ominous, but it's gonna be great because you're gonna be eating lots of chocolate. So the reason I chose this recipe is because it's all from your pantry. You don't have to take anything out of the fridge. No milk, no eggs, no butter. It's all things that you can find. So it'll be easy for you. First, we start with the dry ingredients. It's important that you sift your ingredients. Don't worry, you have time. We're all locked in for a very long time. You have plenty of time to do this. So we're gonna start with 3 cups of flour. Now what I like to do is put in, I spilled a little bit of flour. Just don't use it. Even though I sanitize the counter, don't use that part. So what I like to do is half of the flour, I sift it. And then I do my cocoa in the middle of it, so it's kind of incorporated. So half flour, then my cocoa, then the rest of the flour, so that it's not very difficult to get it all together. So it's 3 cups of flour, although I put about a cup and a half. And it's half a cup of cocoa powder. I'm a spoiled princess and I like special cocoa powder. I buy it on Amazon. It comes straight to me and it's nice and dark. I like it that way. It makes it a lot more rich. Can you see? I don't know if you can tell, but I can see a mist of flour. So we're going to do the rest of the flour. It's really important that you sift because you don't want chunks of any dry in there. Because if you bite into like a big piece of baking soda, it's very bitter and disgusting, actually. We went to this really fancy B&B and they didn't sift their baking soda. And when I was eating their banana bread, I actually had to throw it away because I bit into a huge piece of baking soda and it was disgusting. Speaking of baking soda, now we're putting in 2 teaspoons of baking soda. Make sure you sift that as well. Baking soda gets really clumped together, and when it does that, it just doesn't do right for your baked goods. We're gonna do a teaspoon of kosher salt. If you don't have kosher salt, you can use table salt. I chose not to sift that because the granules are so big that they won't go through the sifter. So I just moved it aside. And then 2 cups of sugar. Now, my husband is filming very kindly. He has his own YouTube channel. And my husband, I'm sure, can remember the time I made this cake and forgot the sugar. Jimmy, from behind the camera, would you like to tell us what happened with that wonderful cake with no sugar in it?
Chocolate without sugar is definitely a no-go.
It's a no-go. It did not taste good. I even tried, I mean, I made so many.
I never tasted it.
Yeah, because it was really disgusting. Yeah. So you just whisk together all the dry ingredients. I've got my flour, my sugar, my cocoa, my baking soda, and my kosher salt. You want to make sure that it's all incorporated, and you want to make sure it looks like a brownie mix or a cake mix. See how there's no chunks of white or brown in there? It's all beautifully incorporated. What I love, yeah, I did make a cake a long time ago, and I made a cake yesterday too. Because we're in quarantine, we're making lots of cakes. Now, we're gonna do the wet ingredients. Oh, my oven is preheated. Did you hear that? It's beeping at me. So we have our dry ingredients in one bowl, the bigger bowl. Remember that. We're gonna put our wet ingredients in the other bowl. So I like to do my oil first, which is 2/3 a cup of oil. Either use vegetable oil or canola oil, anything that's a neutral oil. You do not want your cake to taste like olive oil. However, if that's all you have, you can use olive oil. You're in quarantine, it doesn't really matter. It'll taste better than nothing. We are going to do 2 tablespoons of vanilla and 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. I like to whisk the oil, the vinegar, and the vanilla together before I add the water. I just like to have it a little bit emulsified before I add in the water. Make sure the water's cold. It's really important that you do that. It's that simple. So now we have our dry ingredients in the large bowl. We have our wet ingredients in the small bowl. And all I'm going to do is take the wet ingredients and pour them into the dry ingredients. I like this for many reasons. One, You don't have to use anything out of the fridge. 2, it's 2 bowls. 3, all you need is a whisk. You don't need anything else. You don't need a mixer. So you could technically do this while you're in quarantine with no refrigerator and no power, because you don't need like a KitchenAid or anything. And I like this because if you dump everything all in together, it doesn't get messed up. So it's also a very good recipe to do with children. So if you have a child that dumps whatever they want in at whatever time they want to, it's okay. It won't mess up. My child is desperately trying to get into the shot, and we're keeping her at bay. But she's inching forward. I can see her in my peripheral vision. She's inching forward, moment by moment, trying to be in the shot. She does like the spotlight. You don't have to stir it very long. You just have to make sure that there are no dry parts in there. It's well incorporated. It does look similar to just a brownie mix. It's a little thicker than a chocolate cake mix, but yeah, it's closer to a brownie mix. So that's it. Now, before we started filming, I did this. I put shortening in here, a piece of parchment paper, and then I dusted it with cocoa powder. The reason I chose cocoa powder is because it's a brown cake. I wanted it to look nice. We are in quarantine, but things don't have to be ugly. They can look nice. We're just gonna take our cake and we're gonna separate it into 2 9-inch cake pans. We got half there. Oh, do not want to spill any of this precious batter. So I have the cake in 2 cake pans. I'm gonna teach you a little secret. You might already know this secret. I actually think most of you probably already know all these secrets, but I'll say it anyway. Whenever I make a pan of cake or something like that, I like to kind of slam it on the counter a little bit to get some of the air bubbles out. Just a few. And they're ready to go in the oven. Now I'm gonna show you how to make a chocolate ganache that's from the pantry. Now, it only has 3 ingredients. It has chocolate, has coconut oil, and it has a little bit of kosher salt. If you don't have coconut oil, you can use butter. But for the purpose of this recipe, I'm just saying coconut oil because it's from the pantry. It does not need to be refrigerated. So I have some really nice quality chocolate here. I do not have enough for a full recipe because Mama's been in quarantine with children. So I didn't have enough, so I did half of really good quality chocolate and I did half of just basic chocolate chips. Those will be hidden when this recipe is over for my consumption. So all it is 2 cups of chocolate. Very easy to remember. And then I have 6 tablespoons of melted coconut oil. Make sure it's warm when you pour it in here. Or you could do 6 tablespoons of melted butter. I prefer the butter taste, but there is a secret. Because I'm doing it with coconut oil and because I've done shortening in the cake, this whole cake is vegan. It's vegan and delicious, as well as shelf-stable ingredients. So I'm putting in, I don't know, 1/4 teaspoon, maybe. I don't know, just a little sprinkling of the kosher salt. I actually didn't measure that, to be honest with you. And all you do is stir it until it's entirely incorporated and smooth and silky. Now, you can either pour this over the cake so that it drips over the side while it's still warm, or you can let it cool a little bit and you can spread it more. I'm gonna do the drip method just because I think it's prettier. It's easier. I have to be less patient because I can pour it over the cake immediately and eat it immediately. But like I said, we do have time. So if you wanted to be more patient, let it cool and kind of spread it nicer, and you could do that too. Once you pour that over a cake, you'll forget that your children are locked indoors with you for days on end. Our cake has come out of the oven. It's cooled. We've made our ganache. And what we're going to do is pour a little bit on the first layer. Okay, and then you put on the second layer. This is the best and the easiest part. You literally just pour it. Just let that delicious chocolate pour all over the cake. Okay? You're all done. And there's just enough chocolate in the bowl for me to eat in my closet by myself. It's kind of domed and round. I did wash my hands really, really well. I did just touch it with my hands, but I washed my hands really well. I sang the alphabet twice. Just so you know,